سيدنا محمد وآله وأصحابه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وآله وأصحابه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وآله وأصحابه وسلم. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم. مدد يا الله. So inshallah, today is 27th of Rajab, and last night was the night of Israa and Miraj. I'm sure that all of us know about Shab Miraj and Israa and Miraj. So because it is the day of Miraj, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about Miraj and Israa and some of the wisdom behind it and hikmah behind it, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran in Surah Israa, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. In Surah Najm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned فأوحى إلى عبده ما أوحى ما كذب الفؤاد ما رأى أفتمارونه على ما يرى ولقد رآه نزلة أخرى عند سدرة المنتهى عندها جنة المأوى إذ يغشى السدرة ما يغشى ما زاغ البصر وما طغى ولقد رأى من آيات ربه الكبرى. And Allah revealed upon His servant what He revealed. The heart of the Prophet did not misconstrue what he saw. Will you then dispute with him as to what he saw? And certainly he saw him descend a second time by the lote tree beyond which none may pass, the garden of eternal repose. When the lote tree was covered in mystic splendor, his sight did not waver, nor was it unduly bold. He saw some of the greatest signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are lots and lots of narrations about Isra and Miraj. Many, many ahadiths we find about Isra and Miraj. And because there are different narrations by different Sahaba, there are some variations in those narrations. I'm just going to present a summary of the whole event and the wisdom behind it from all the authentic narrations that I have come across, or the ulama say that these are authentic narrations. So all the details we are not going to be able to go through, but most of it, inshallah, will be captured. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He chose to take Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to a journey from Makkah to Masjid al-Aqsa to show him some of his signs. So the purpose was mentioned already in the Quran in Surah Isra, right in the beginning. That the purpose was for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam some of his great signs. Thereafter, the details of journey has been documented in the ahadith. No further details of the journey we find in the Quran. The rest of the details of the journey is from what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained himself about what this journey was all about. There are various narrations about the time this journey occurred. But certainly, this journey took place between the first and the second year. Can you hear me now? Okay. Is it okay now? Can you hear me now? All right. Yeah. Like I mentioned, that there are various narrations about exactly when this journey took place. But what is certain was that this journey took place before the hijrat of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam from Makkah to Medina. That much we are sure of. And most of the narrations and narrators agree that that journey took place between a year and 2 years before the hijrah to Makkah al-Mukarramah. I'm going to give you a bit of background of what was happening at that time. At that time, just between a year and 2 years, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lost most of his support system in Makkah. Abu Talib, his uncle, who was defending him, who was looking after him, who was protecting him, passed away. And soon after, Hazrat Khadija radiallahu anha passed away. Those were his two major support systems. And he lost both of them in a very short time. When that happened, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam felt very unsafe in Makkah because the kuffar of Quraysh now were bold in harassing him. It was because of Abu Talib, his uncle, that they were not bugging him that much, not harassing him that much. But when he passed away, Hazrat Khadija was also gone, they became very bold. And he felt quite unsafe and insecure. So he decided to travel to Taif and perhaps call people of Taif to Islam and live among them and seek their protection. Zayd bin Harisa was with him. Unfortunately, that did not pan out because when he went to Taif and offered them Islam, instead of listening to him, they stoned him. And they got their youth to stone him as he was walking back, so much so that his feet, his shoes were filled of blood from the stoning. Subhanallah bihamdihi subhanallah. Look at the greatness of this prophet and the kindness that he had in his heart for all people. Looking at his situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to him the angel that controlled the mountains. And he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you for your permission for me to bring these two mountains close and destroy all these people. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His kindness and his mercy was for all, believers and non-believers. He said to the angel, no, absolutely not. Maybe their generations to come will accept Islam. Subhanallah bihamdihi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. With a sad heart, he returned to Makkah al-Mukarramah and sought refuge in one of the leaders of the Quraysh of Makkah. This happened at that time. In the night of 27th of Rajab, he was resting in the house of Hani. Hani was Abu Talib's daughter and Hazrat Ali's sister. Remember, Aisha radiallahu anha was no longer, and he was not married again at that time. So he was resting in the house of Hani. He mentions, now, everything that I'm going to mention from here on, Hazrat Khadija had passed away.
Yes, you mentioned Aisha.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hazrat Khadija had passed away. And he was resting in the house of Hani. Now, from here on, everything that I mentioned is taken from his narrations, his ahadith, and these are the translations of it. So they are not exactly the ahadith. Please understand that. Just the gist of what he said. So he mentioned that he was resting at night in the house of Hani, and suddenly he noticed that the roof came apart. And Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam with some angels descended into the house of Hani. They picked him up and they took him to Haram Sharif, to Kaabatullah. And they laid him down in Hatim. We all know what Hatim is, that we have gone to Kaabatullah. So they laid them down in Hatim. And Jibreel alayhi opened his chest. He took out his heart and all the innards, cleaned it with Abi Zamzam, and put it all back and poured in his chest a bowl full of hikmah and iman. This was the second incident of his chest being opened up and cleaned. If you remember, when he was a child, at the time when he was with Dai Halima, who was looking after him, and he was playing outside, and this had happened at that time as well. And at that time, Jibreel alayhi took off some piece of flesh from him and threw it away. And that was all the flesh that could have been possibly influenced by shaitan at the time when he was growing up. But this is the second time. After they cleaned his chest and poured wisdom and iman in his heart and covered it up, they woke him up. And remember something. People who are educated, who have the scientific mind, will always question these things. How can you open up somebody's chest in a masjid and clean it and do so and then put it back? Why there was no indication of the cutting of the chest? Am I right? That anybody who has any surgery would have these marks on their body of the cuts. And therefore, there are many, many, many who have denied all of these things. But those who believe would know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not lie about it. There's no reason for him to lie about these things. And if he said so, that is the case. There's also lots and lots of misinformation and misconstruction of this whole incident of Isra and Miraj. Many, many believe and still keep promoting this, that it was just a dream. He didn't go anywhere. He just dreamt it. But Quran itself negates it in the verses that I just read. If he was just dreaming it, why was this big deal made of it? I mean, people dream all kinds of things. There was no reason to make such a big deal out of all of this. There was no reason to question. Who questions dreams? But he was questioned right after in a very big way. So we believe that he was actually, this journey was in his body and soul, not just his soul. And he was not dreaming. He was awake. So he was awakened after his heart and his chest was cleaned. When he woke up, he says that I saw an animal who looked something like in between a mule and a horse. And he had two big wings on his side. This is what is called buraq. Jibreel alayhi asked him to mount this animal, the buraq, and he mounted the animal, and they took off with him. They took off with him in the direction of Masjid Aqsa. Now remember, Masjid Aqsa in those days from Haram Sharif was at the distance that took 40 days to travel. It took 40 days to travel from Haram Sharif to Masjid Aqsa. So they took him to the Masjid al-Aqsa, and in many narrations it mentions like what did he saw on the way to Masjid al-Aqsa. But many of those narrations are deemed not authentic. So I've just left it up. There's no point talking about something that is not authenticated. So when they arrived at the Bad al-Maqdis, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam dismounted from the Buraq, and Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam tied it up with a hole in the rock outside of the Bait al-Maqdis. I'm told that that rock still exists, as was, and still has the hole in it, that it still exists outside of Bait al-Maqdis. He also mentioned one thing that is narrated in the Sahih Ahadith, is that on his way to Masjid Aqsa, remember, lots of prophets are buried around that area. Lots of prophets are buried around that area. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned that as I was arriving to Bait al-Maqdis, I saw Musa alayhi salatu salam in his grave offering prayers. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanallah. When he dismounted, he was taken to Masjid Aqsa. And Masjid Aqsa at that time, all the Anbiya alayhi salatu salam were present to welcome him. Jibreel alayhi salatu salam introduced him to all the Anbiya. He greeted them and they greeted him back. And he was asked to lead a prayer for all of the Anbiya alayhi salatu salam. It is mentioned also that the first adhan that was called was by Jibreel alayhi salatu salam in Masjid Aqsa on that night. Now again, there's a question. See, I'm going to, as I explain this, I'm going to raise questions as well that questions may come to you, right? So, question. Were these Anbiya alayhi salatu salam in their body and soul, or just their souls? Right? Were these Anbiya alayhi salam with body and soul, or just their souls? Some believe it was their souls, some believe it was their body and soul. Now, you remember in these modern days, there is a way to project somebody's pictures in a way that it appears like the person is there. क्या कहते हैं उसको भाई? Holograms. When they project a picture of somebody as a hologram, it appears that the person is actually there, but the person is not actually there. When this is possible in today's time, why would not that be possible for something like this to happen with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time? We also know that Anbiya alayhi salatu salam are alive in their graves, correct? We also know that their souls are in barzakh, but they are alive in their qubur, in their graves, and we don't know exactly what is the nature of that existence. We do not know what is the nature of that existence. We are told that they are given their sustenance in their qubur, in their graves. What kind of sustenance is that? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody else can know this. But we have been told this, so we believe it. So regardless of whether their soul or body, or it was some way of representing them, it was some way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to represent them in the Bait al-Maqdis, Allahu Alam, we don't know. But it is noted in Sahih Ahadith that he was in Masjid Aqsa, he was taken to Masjid Aqsa, and he was asked to lead the prayer. Jibreel alayhi salatu salam called the adhan, and he led the prayer of all the Anbiya alayhi salatu salam. Thereafter, they came out of the masjid, and he was put back on the Buraq. And the journey to the heavens began. The first part of journey so far to Masjid Aqsa is called Asra, Al-Asra. Now this journey from here on to seven heavens is called Mi'raj. And I just wanted to make a distinction. So, Israa and Miraj are two different parts of the same journey in the same night. They traveled through each level of heavens, and at each level, the guardian angels would ask the question, who is it and who is with him? And Jibreel alayhi answered, this is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The angels would ask the question, has he been invited? Has he been allowed to come? Jibreel alayhi would answer, yes, he is. And then they opened the gate of the heavens. One thing to understand here, therefore. The gates to the seven heavens are guarded. Nobody can pass them without the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is an implication of this, which is all the attempts that are being made to explore the space and the black holes, etc., etc., and the farthest galaxies, etc., etc., they all exist below the first gate of heavens. There's no reach of anybody beyond the first gate of the heaven. Everything exists for us underneath it, not above it. And that's important to understand. So when he crossed the first gate, he met Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, he greeted him, and Adam alayhi salatu wasalam greeted him by saying, welcome my pious son, my pious Nabi. Then they journeyed to the second level of the heaven. At the second level, he met Isa alayhi salatu wasalam and Yahya alayhi salatu wasalam. Question again raises. He just met them at Aqsa. He just met them in Aqsa and led their prayers. So what are they doing up there? I explained to you when we were talking about life after life, I explained to you barzakh, am I right? And I also explained to you that barzakh have different layers. Right. It is very possible that these Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam's souls were in their own barzakhs up in the seven heavens. Like Jannat has several levels, barzakh has several levels. The barzakh in the under the earth, Sijin, also has several levels. It's possible that their souls were present at each level where they were residing. Again, if the souls were presented as they were presented in Masjid Aqsa, he would see them as alive. Nothing to worry about this, no doubt about it. So he met Yahya alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam, who are cousins. They greeted him and he greeted them back. He moved up to third level. On the third level, he saw Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam similarly greeted him. And after the greetings, he moved to the next level. And remember, at every level, the guardians of that gate would ask the same question. Who is it? Who is with him? Has he been permitted to come? At the fifth level, he met Harun alayhi salatu wasalam. You know Harun alayhi salatu wasalam that accompanied Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to Firaun. This is where he was at the fifth level. He greeted him and the greetings were exchanged. He moves on. At the sixth level, he sees Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. He was sitting leaning against a tree or sitting, and he greeted him, and he greeted him the same way. And as he moved on, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam started to cry. So someone asked him, why are you crying? And he said, this young person came after me as a Nabi. I came first. He came after. But his ummah will be the majority in the Jannah. Subhanallah, bihamdihi, subhanallah. He moved on, crossing the seventh level. He came upon Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Look, all the Anbiya that he met so far are descendant of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. That's who he met. There is no mention of him meeting Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam anywhere. Subhanallah. We don't know why. But if you look at all the Anbiya that he met and the connection that he had with all the Anbiya rests at Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. This is where all it started, after Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam. So Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was at the seventh level. He greeted him, said, "Welcome, my pious son and pious Nabi." Journeying further, they arrived at a place called Sidratul Muntaha. Sidratul Muntaha. Sidra means tree. Muntaha means the limit, the finite limit. Intiha, Urdu mein lafz jo hai. You know, it is the end. This is it. Nobody can go beyond this. Sidratul Muntaha was described by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a tree which was full of leaves as big as the ears of an elephant. And the fruits were as big as barrels. And it was all lighted. From there, when he was there, Jibreel alayhi salam explained something to him. He said that in the root of this tree there are 4 rivers that flow. From the roots of this tree there are 4 rivers that flow. You know, when we are here, we know the continental divide. Those of us who have gone to Rockies and know, a continental divide, some water flows on this side and the other water flows on this side. We know that already. It was like a divide. So the 4 rivers that flow from the roots of this tree, 2 of them flow in the paradise. One of them is Kauthar, the other name I don't know a name of. And the 2 of them are the sources of water of the river of Nile and the river of Frat on this earth. So the water that comes into Frat and Nile, the source of it is in Sidratul Muntaha. How? Obviously through the rain. Obviously through the rain. But the rainwater is actually, instead of coming all from the clouds, they also, for those 2 rivers, they flow from up above the heavens as well. How it happens, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. This is what Jibreel told him. Remember, my dear brothers and sisters, there are many, many things we would never understand because our understanding is limited. We are not capable of understanding beyond certain things. And our human mind may question all kinds of things. But we do need to believe if the Prophet ﷺ said this, this is true. How? Wallahu alam. We don't know. After that, he also mentioned that at this point of Sidratul Muntaha, all the knowledge that everyone has about anything ends here. This is the finite limit of any knowledge that anybody can have. Beyond what exists, nobody knows. Nobody would have any knowledge of what exists beyond here. After which, he was taken to a place called Baytul Ma'mur. Baytul Ma'mur is a place located up in the 7th heaven, exactly above Kaabatullah. So if you go to Haram Sharif, and if you're standing at Kaabatullah, and if you look straight up, there's Baytul Ma'mur. And it is the place, it is the Kaaba of the angels. So as you know, we know that unless Haram Sharif is closed for some reason, there's somebody making tawaf of it all the time. Am I right? There's never ever a time when some people were not making tawaf of Kaabatullah, except in those cases where there's a flood or something happened and they had to close them up. Similarly, 70,000 angels make the tawaf of Baitul Mamur every day. And those who complete their tawaf will never have their turn again. What does this tell you about the number of angels there are? Subhanallah wa hamdihi subhanallah. At this point, Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam stopped at Sidratul Muntaha. This is the limit of my reach. Can't go beyond it. Now from here on, the journey is on you by yourself. And he moved by himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept saying to him, come close, come close, come close. Until he was so close, like the distance of 2 bows length. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through a veil. Let me explain that part as well. No human eyes can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Am I right? If you remember, when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam asked Allah to show himself to him, he said to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, you won't be able to see it. And then what happened? He said, look at this mountain. I'm going to show myself to this mountain. If you can bear this, you can see me. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented himself to the mountain, his nur, Musa alayhi salam passed away. He could not bear it. And when he woke up, he made istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in person? Wallahu alam. We do not know. But we know that somehow he perceived Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's nur from behind a veil. Because the only time human beings will be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with their own eyes will be in paradise. In Yawm al-Qiyamah and in paradise. That's when they would actually see him. And again, in what state they would see him, we don't know. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have a body. Am I right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have a body. So in what state will we see him? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke to him, saw him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented him with 3 of most important blessings for him and for his ummah. One of them, we all know, is the salah. The story goes like this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mandated 50 prayers a day for his ummah. The second thing that Allah presented him with was the last verses of Surah Baqarah. The last 3 verses of Surah Baqarah. And the third thing was a promise that anybody who will die on Iman without associating anybody with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive him. La ilaha illallah. With those 3 gifts of presents, when he returned and came to the 6th level of heaven and met Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam asked him, what did Allah present you with? He said, 50 prayers a day for my ummah. And he says, not possible. I know your ummah will not be able to do it. Go back and ask for reduction. He went back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asked for the reduction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it 40, 10 less. Came back. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam said again the same thing. He made the visit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala several times. Until in the last visit, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said 5 prayers, not 50. But each one will carry the reward of 10 prayers. Subhanallah wa hamdihi, subhanallah. This is also a blessing of being part of the Ummah of Rasulullah. Which is why every pious deed carries 10 rewards. Every pious deed carries 10 rewards. But every bad deed is only one. Jaza. We are such a blessed people being in the Ummah of Rasulullah. Upon his return, he was taken to paradise. He saw the paradise and he saw the pond of Kausar. Upon each side of it were domes covered with pearls. He also saw some of the houses in the Jannah. Then he was taken to take a look at the hell. When he peeked in the hell, this is in the hadith, that he saw most of them were women. And again, in other hadiths, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has explained why so. We talked about it last time, if you remember. As he moved further, he saw some people that had long nails like copper. And they were scratching their faces in their chest with these copper nails. And he stopped and says, Jibreel, who are these people? He said, those are the people who slandered other people and dishonored them on earth. This is their punishment. This is not to be taken easily. Please watch your mouth as to what you say about who. If you slander someone, if you backbite someone, if you don't make tawbah, that will be your punishment. These are the signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for him to bring back to his people. For what purpose? To warn them and to give them good tidings. That was the reason. As he mentioned, that I took my servant at that night from Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa to do what? To show him a greatest of our signs. These were the signs for him to witness himself and bring it back to his ummah. For what reason? So they will be mindful of how they live and the choices they make and how they behave. Moving ahead, he saw some people, he saw some spreads upon which there were all kinds of fantastic, delicious food, roasted beef, roasted meat, everything. But nobody was around it. Then he saw some more spreads, and upon each was rotten meat, smelling foul, and lots of people were eating from it. And somebody said, Ya Jibreel, what is this? Why is this people not eating from this delicious, nicely roasted meat and eating from this rotten food? He says, these are the people who preferred haram over halal. Be mindful. 2 days ago, a question was asked to the Imam at our masjid. Is eating from McDonald's halal? Is buying meat from Safi halal? And this is what he mentioned at that time, the Imam. He said, Allah ke bando, when halal is available? Why do you want to keep asking questions about can I eat from McDonald's? Can I eat from Kentucky Chicken? Why when halal is available? And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed him. Halal has been provided, but people choose to do haram. That's what we need to watch for. These are the signs that Rasulullah brought back for us to learn lessons from and be mindful not to be engaged in those types of behaviors. And then he saw some people whose lips were like hanging like the lips of the camels. You know how the camels' lips keep hanging down? And they would just keep opening their mouth, and from their mouth, they would keep sort of regurgitating, throwing out, food and meat and all kinds of things. Says, who are these people? So these are the people who took other people's belongings unjustly, who usurped other people's belongings unjustly, who cheated other people, who cheated the orphans and ate from them and usurped other people's properties unjustly. This is the punishment for them. Then, moving forward, he saw some women who had their breast hanging down. He says, who are these people? Who are these women? He says, these were the women who were basically zina, performing zina, and attracting men to perform these deeds with them. Again, going back, why we have talked about this many times. Why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided us men and women the commandments about how to dress, how to present ourselves, how to the mahram, na mahram, the restrictions between mahram, na mahram. Why? For this reason, to prevent us, men and women, to get into that situation, to end up there. As he moved on, he saw some people whose stomach was like big, huge bellies. And he asked them, who are they? He says, these are the people who are the followers of Pharaohs, and also the people who actually make zulm on the people and take their belongings away from them and usurp it and make it their own. So many times he saw many of these signs. There are others as well. But the point has been made. To conclude, what was the purpose of all this thing? The purpose of all these things were not only to express the greatness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the status that he had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is not the main purpose. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave all kinds of different mu'jizat to different anbiya. And Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the last of the prophet upon which the deen of Islam was completed. He was Khatimun Nabiyyin. And as Khatimun Nabiyyin, he had some extra blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala above and beyond other anbiya. We know this. Some people who have so much love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they exaggerate things and they say, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was so feeling lonely and he was so dying to see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He could not wait to see him, so he asked Jibreel to bring him. Cannot Allah see him all the time? These are nonsensical things that people believe out of the aqidah and love. But we have to be realistic, and we have to make sure that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself has told us not to exaggerate about him. Am I right? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has admonished us not to put me above and beyond other Anbiya, not to exaggerate about me. So lots of other things and books have been written about it. This, what I presented to you today, is from authentic books based on authentic ahadith only. But what was the reason for all of this? The reason has been mentioned in Surah Israa, first verses, as I told you. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted His servant to show him major signs. Among the major signs, the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself, that He witnessed Himself. And other major signs are the blessings that He brought with Him, and also the consequences of the behavior of His ummah if they behave this way, this way, this way, or disobeyed Him. To show him those signs, so that he can truly be the warner and the bearer of the good news. Because now he saw it. Bhai dekho, if you see something with your eyes about some behavior and what good it did and what bad it did, when you talk to somebody, you will talk with such a conviction. Bhai, maine khud apni aankhon se dekha hai. If you're going to do this, this was going to happen. I saw this. So this provided Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself the conviction of all of these things, to brought it back to his people and make the da'wat of Islam in a very authentic way. And that was the whole purpose of this. By the way, it was the next morning of the day of Miraj that when he mentioned it to Ummahani because he woke up again back in the house of Ummahani. And he mentioned it to Ummahani. Ummahani says, please, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, don't mention outside. He said, I have to mention it because if I don't have to mention it, this whole experience is for no use. As soon as he came out and he's sitting in Kaabatullah and he's Hatim, and he's holding his head, and Abu Lahab shows up. And Abu Lahab says, what's going on? In a very, insulting way. What's going on? And he told him what happened. He said, say it again. Tell it to me again. So you traveled from here to Aqsa, and then from there to the heavens, and saw God and came back in the same night. He said, yes. He said, would you please repeat it if I bring some more people? He said, sure. So he went and very enthusiastically brought back lots of people. Said, now we can truly tell that there's something wrong with his head. So a number of people were brought in. Says, would you please tell him again? So he told him the same thing. And they were so happy. They were, clapping and saying, now we have a proof that he has a problem with his head. He is delusional. He is hallucinating. Guess what they did? They went to the closest person to him, who? Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. He said, guess what? Guess what your friend is saying? He said, what is he saying? So he's saying that he, last night, traveled from here to Masjid Aqsa, from there to see God, and came back by Fajr time. He said, is this what he said? He said, this is what he said? He says, if he said so, I believe him. See, ye hoti hai Musliman ki shaan. This is the virtue of a true Muslim. If the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said it, I believe it. There's no doubt about it. Which is why he's called Abu Bakr Siddiq. This is where he got his laqab of Siddiq. It was that day when this thing became, more famous, people knew more about it. Those who had gone to Masjid Aqsa and Bait al-Maqdis came to test him. And they said, okay, tell me how many pillars are in the masjid. Obviously, if it was a dream, and he started to count. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the veil between his eyes and Masjid Aqsa. And he saw it right in front of his eyes, and he answered all the questions to him. It was that day that Jibreel alayhi salam came and taught Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam how to pray. Remember something to finish it off quickly. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was praying before. We already know that. But how he was praying, we don't know. It has not been mentioned as to what was the form or format of his salah before Miraj. It was on day of Miraj that Jibreel salam returned back and taught him how to pray. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always keep us in the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always make us mindful to learn the lessons from the signs that he brought back and make sure that we don't end up in the same plight as those people were. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. سبحان ربي العلي الأعلى الوهاب ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب القبر وقنا عذاب الحشر وقنا عذاب الميزان ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت المستعان ولك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين لا إله إلا الله محمد